now declare the January 27th, 2022 BZA meeting open for business. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay. First on the agenda is a roll call, please.
It's the same, Bev. I forgot to bring one in for you, but the membership hasn't changed.
Okay. Carrie Simpkins. Here. Bill Crawford.
Here.
Jeff Fisher.
Here.
Darren Price.
Here.
Leota King. Here. Bill Mcdaniel.
Present.
Jeff Wessling.
Present.
And myself.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda, we've got August 27th, or I'm sorry, August 26th, September 23rd, and October 18th minutes.
Bev has the copies for signature.
So I'll take a motion. If you want to read them first, that's okay. Be a good idea.
I looked them over. I'd make a motion to approve.
Second.
I didn't hear what he said.
He made a motion to approve the minutes, and she probably seconded it. All those in favor of approving the minutes as presented, signal by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
Okay, and ordinarily, if there's a new member, but Mr. Fisher graciously agreed to continue in his stead. Yeah, well, I'm trying to give you credit for being a really swell guy. But as I've informed Mr. Fisher that, because at the last minute, is that when it comes time around the end of the year, that if he does desire to resign, it'll give the commissioners plenty more time, rather than I guess I want to apologize to all the members because I was a little late with that than I usually am, so I do apologize for that. And so part of that problem is lies with me, with Jeff,
No problem.
as I said,
Okay.
because you're a swell guy.
Next on the agenda is the election of officers. First, we'll take nominations for the chair.
I nominate Bill Crawford.
I'll second it.
Anyone else?
I move the nomination to be closed.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, ready? All right, nomination's been made for Bill Crawford, and I accept. So, well, next we'll go to the vice chair.
Oh, they still got to vote.
Oh, yeah, oh, excuse me. Okay, we'll vote on the chair, for me to be the chairman again. All those in favor, voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, looks like I'm the chair again. All right, now we'll open the nominations for vice chair.
I nominate Carrie.
I'll second it.
Anyone else? Okay, we'll close we'll close the nominations for the vice chair. All those in favor of Carrie being the vice chair, voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Looks like you're the vice chair. Okay, we'll open up the nominations for the secretary.
Nominate Bev Rude.
Second.
Any others?
Nomination.
Okay, she made a motion to close.
Second.
Okay. We've got one person for secretary, that's Bev. Nominations are closed. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, Bev, you're the secretary. All right.
Yeah, you ready for some more of those big paychecks?
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, they do pay for all the cats that are running around the
That's
trailer.
true. I can't fit.
All right, next on the agenda is the public hearing, number 15433, with Dungan Aerial Services applying for a special exception for a private airstrip and a hangar. I want to open up the public meeting, so if you want to come up and explain whoever's representing.
When would you like me to?
Well-
Right there's fine.
Oh, well, if you drag that podium over, that'd be
Yeah,
helpful.
we'll put you to work.
Yeah.
For future reference.
At least you have something to lean on that way. And your
okay.
paperwork.
All right, just, it's on your form.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name's Jeff Dungan. I'm here for the special exception for Runway and hangar that I've built on 500 North in Posey Township. I've got something I wrote up here.
Well, yeah, I guess probably the easiest one is probably just go through with your proposed findings and some of the other things we had a conversation about with how you're using it, how basically everything else is left at the airport.
Okay.
And as I asked you, for edification for me and then others, is describing the different types of classes and types of airports.
Okay.
As we
Okay.
discussed briefly.
Well, the special exception is for a private airplane, for hangar and grass runway for our aerial ag spraying business. The proposed use is for, just for that. We've built a hangar and a runway to store ag aircraft. Let me read this, I guess, first, and then I'll go back to that.
Yeah.
In the fall of 2011, we seeded a grass runway on 450 West between 400 North and 500 North. We received approval for a private use runway from the FAA and NDOT's Department of Aviation. At that time, we had a newly constructed hangar / machinery storage building located next to this runway. We stored our 2 ag aircraft and farm machinery in this building. For 9 years, we flew to and from this location to other airports around the state for our aerial spraying business. Our season runs from May through October. For the other 6 months, there was essentially no flying activity. We utilized this runway until April 1st of 2020, and at that time, the FAA officially closed the runway on 450 North and opened the new runway on 500 North. The new location showed up on aeronautical charts in May of 2020. In the fall of 2019, we seeded the new grass runway on our property approximately 2.5 miles west of the old runway on 500 North. And we constructed a new hangar during the fall of 2020 to store our 2 ag aircraft. And there were 2 main reasons for moving the runway to the new location. The first and most important was that our existing runway had a large hump in the middle, which was a hazard during takeoffs and landings. It was a matter of time before we tore an airplane up. The new runway is flat and it's much safer for takeoffs and landings. And then our second reason for moving was we'd outgrown our hangar / machinery hangar storage building, and it was also a matter of time before we were going to tear up an airplane in there because we'd gotten things so tight. The new building is smaller and is currently dedicated to airplane-only storage. We plan to use this hangar and runway just as we did the other for our private use and storage of our personal aircraft. The runway will be roughly utilized during the same months, May through October, and roughly the same amount of takeoffs and landings as the previous airstrip. Please grant this special exception. The runway and hangar is vital for our flying business. And I guess Bill wanted me to explain maybe the difference between our airport and say the Connersville airport. If you have a a private airport, or it's called a private use airport. And the person that owns that is the only one that can grant someone else to come in and use it. And I have no desire for that. We built this for our personal airplanes that we use in our business. And a public use airport is like Connersville or many of the other airports where you don't need permission to land and use it. So what we do in our business, we store these airplanes at this hangar, and we fly throughout the state of Indiana, western Ohio, and eastern Illinois. So we may take off one morning and fly down to Evansville, and we might be there for 3 or 4 days working, and then return to our airstrip and land and store it. The concern was, I believe, that we would be mixing chemicals and fueling, and that's not our intent. Our intent is just for storage only. The Connersville Airport or the Evansville Airport, those airports all have hard surface runways or asphalt runways. They're long. We can load our airplanes all the way up. There's plenty of room. And when we come in late evening, there's lighting on the runway. You know, we have none of that at our private airstrip. It's mainly just for, you know, storage of our aircraft.
So really, it's a strictly daylight hour operation.
Yes, yes, it is.
Anybody got questions?
Yeah, I have a few.
Okay.
Bill, I mean, I guess, did you come in at all to talk to Bill before you built the barn?
No,
Or the-
we
no.
did not.
No.
And, I mean, Carrie, I thought that we had to go through our channels. Once we were approved by the FAA and the state, I thought we were good to go.
Yeah. Well, and you did it in 2011, and there wasn't any issue. And,
Right,
Yeah, like
right. Yeah.
and I do understand
Yeah.
that. I just
Yeah.
think, like, one of the things that worries me is it's a class 1 structure.
Yeah.
So technically, it needed a state design release before you used it, and that should have gone through the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
And then the other thing is did you get is the septic system approved?
No.
Okay. So do you ever have employees there?
Rarely. I mean, it's pretty much my spot.
Okay. Well, then potentially it would need a state,
Yeah.
you know, you might be able to get out of that. I'll be truthful. One of the things, it's not necessarily that the special exception bothers me, because I don't think that you're really doing anything out there that's that out of the way. It's just that there are several things with the structure that should have, and I understand why you didn't know you needed to go through those channels. I mean, it does worry me. I don't want it to be perceived as if the board not taking anything seriously. And, you know, I don't know the situation, but you know, they were talking about something before the meeting even started about a small problem where somebody's kind of living in something they're not supposed to be living in. I actually have like 3 of those I want to discuss with Bill before I leave. And I don't know, could we put a condition on the approval that those things have to be pursued within a certain amount of time?
Okay, you're asking about, there should have been septic for the bathrooms in the other,
And the state design release.
yeah. Okay, and I think that the actual, because I know that Matt has had such as with the DNA genetics up there is when it's a class 1, even though it's something he's capable of, does have to be approved by the state of Indiana for class 1 use. So you might want to check on that. Okay, check with that.
And so maybe it be broad. I mean, I don't want to say that it has to, I guess here's the thing. I don't want to say you must get a state design release. And then you go talk to them and them say, oh, well, there is this special thing for aviation that you don't have to. I don't know. I mean, there is an exemption for ag. That's the only reason I know that. That's the only reason I knew the whole state design release thing. The exemption for ag, I did look it up because quite frankly, I thought if it didn't apply to you, I wasn't gonna bring it up. But with ag, it has to be, strictly only ag use. So like your machine shed, that falls, now that you're not, even if you have employees in there, because you're doing all ag in there, it's not a class 1. Because this isn't, even though it's an ag business, it's not directly related to production ag. Same thing about a hog barn. So if they're in there with the hogs, it's not class 1. If they build an office next to it, then the office has to be class 1.
Well, I would like to say that as soon as after I spoke with you, after that meeting was brought to my attention, is next day I posted the letter and Mr. Dungan responded immediately.
Yeah, and I am not in favor of I guess I don't want to tip my hand here, but I think that they meet the special exception criteria, but I think that there are things outside of the special exception criteria that need to be addressed.
Okay.
I would like to say that we do have a farm shop, and it has a bathroom, and that's where our employees go to almost every morning when we're not in summer. And that septic tank was approved, and we helped install it. We have our own equipment, so we decided we could put this one in ourselves.
Okay.
We're also building a house next to this, and that septic system has been
Yeah,
approved.
I know that has gotten the
But
approval.
I did not, this was our own.
Well, what you probably want to do then, check with Matt, the process then for the septic, since it is a class 1 use, whether or not it's something he can do, or you have to get it from the state health department. And then then we'll see what we need to do then about coming and seeing you next week, and we'll help you out with doing what you need to do with the design release.
Okay.
Jeff, is that something that we can do in a condition of a special exception?
Sure can.
Yeah, because it's after the fact, but we're still trying to make sure that
And it may be such a
they're
thing-
legal with everything.
Yeah, it may be such a thing that, when you talk to DHS, they really are decent up there, and they may say, an as-built, I don't know what the protocol is for that, so I don't want to put it, I'm kind of leery about a timeline even, I don't know, can we have an update in 30 days, and then at that time,
Well, yeah, I guess what you could do is
you understand what what does anybody else, do you have?
I was thinking maybe we could just postpone it until he
Well-
finds out what's going on. And then, because obviously you're not doing any spraying right now. So, if we put it off till next month,
Well, actually, I think you could probably make things contingent, for the final approval. And then, for example, then coming into compliance with whatever needs to be done with the septic, and then also as far as the design release goes.
but I've seen too many things where we did something similar to that.
Yeah.
And then it didn't get followed up on, and
Yeah.
this way, if we have him go through the process, because I know they have this, they deal with this all the time, in the state. So it would be something probably you could handle within 30 days, for sure.
In terms of at least understanding the timeline or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, I don't know if it could be resolved, because a lot of times their
Right.
turnaround is more than
Right.
30
Yeah,
days.
yeah, exactly.
But
Because
I don't want to hold up your business, obviously, but I just feel like that, if we just hold off on the special exception, it's not really going to hurt you at this point.
I was gonna say, I don't mean to be flip,
No,
but
no,
we're not really holding them up right now anyway. It's not,
I know,
I guess I feel like it's kind of,
but it's something that should have been looked at, and
I agree.
we probably, that's what I think we should do. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know the rest of you, what you think.
I'm not even sure what you're talking about, Carrie. I'm gonna have to, I have no idea what that is.
And Bill can help you with some of
All
that.
it is that basically, and it's, the state design release is just that if you have a structure that has employees in it, or if it's used in certain ways, then you have to have basically they just want to make sure that the roof isn't going to fall in on their employees' heads. That's basically, that it is rated for employees to be in it, and it's safe, and it's not going to, it's building codes for structures to protect employees.
Hearing, but since it's a Morton building,
They probably have, honestly, it may be very, very easy.
Yeah. Well, just check with Morton Buildings about getting the, because typically the designers and the builders, since they're a design and build, quite frequently, a lot of the time is, I've seen design releases come down where Morton Buildings has handled it.
Yeah, so I don't think it's going to be,
I
I don't think it's gonna be onerous, it just is a box that needs to be checked, and so, yeah, if you just Google Indiana State Design Release and you'll go, that's and the staff there is actually very friendly. There's some fire codes, but they're really, they're very, very, very easy to understand, talk to the builder, and so, I guess I kind of agree with, I don't know, I would go either way. I mean, I'm okay.
I just hate to do it because I've seen it in the past. I mean, where people, once they walked out of here after they got the special exception, then they just like, okay, I'll get to it someday, and then it never gets done. And I'm not saying you would do that, obviously, but I just feel more comfortable if at least you started that process, and then I'd feel comfortable going ahead.
Well, it goes in with continued from time to time. Because it would have to be really basically just 1 month at a time, correct, Jeff? Rather than say 2 months to do it.
Right.
Do it a month,
Yeah, do it in a month. So I guess part of that would be then just update me then for the month and know whether or not we'll place you back on the agenda.
Before we make a decision, this
Yeah.
is a public hearing. We need to, if there's
Yes.
anybody that has comments, we need to allow them to do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, we're out of order really with
yeah,
that.
agreed.
Okay.
So, and I would like to say, to your point, and this is quite frankly, it is a small town, folks do know each other, that kind of thing, and I will use my knowledge, Jeff. I understand your concern, and, this isn't a dog kennel.
Right. Yeah.
That's a kind of an inside joke between Bill and I, but,
Yeah.
but I don't have any fear that Jeff would
I don't know.
follow up on it.
But for the public part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Okay, I guess we got this conversation ahead of time.
Yeah.
all right. Are there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this?
That makes that easy.
Okay.
Are you going to close the public hearing, or are you going to continue the public hearing?
And that's going to depend upon that course of action.
My recommendation would be, if we're not going to make a ruling today, then I think you continue the public hearing.
That's kind of what direction I was leading
Well, I was
to.
gonna say, but
You can close it.
I'm gonna make a motion that, and I apologize, Bill, but I would move that we approve the special exception contingent on the fact that they get the state design release and the septic approved within a year. And I would like an update to Bill for our next meeting on the timeline for that.
I'll second that motion.
That's my motion.
All right. You want to read that back, or?
I didn't get it down.
Okay.
You want me to say it again?
Yeah.
Yeah, just for the record.
Sure. I move to approve the special exception contingent on the fact that they get the state design release and the septic approved within a year, and an update to Bill for our next meeting on their progress.
Yeah, because ever since the COVID hit, the design releases have been very, very slow. And I suspect it's the same thing at the Department of Health.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, motion has been made and properly seconded. All those in favor? Oh,
We need a roll call
so I
on
need
that.
to close the meeting, public meeting
Yeah.
first, right?
Yeah, I moved to close the public meeting.
Okay.
I don't know, we already have one. Can we stop? That's kind of out of order.
All right, we got the motion made to close the public meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Public meetings, hearing is closed. Okay, so now we got the motion on the floor to go ahead and approve the special exception. Is there any discussion before we do that? That's what was already said.
Okay, who seconded?
I did.
Yoda.
Okay,
All right, so all those in favor of approving this special exception?
roll call vote.
Roll call.
Okay, let's do it.
Carrie Simpkins,
Yes.
Bill Crawford,
Yes.
Jeff Fisher,
Yes.
Darren Price,
Yes.
Leota King.
Yes.
Okay. All righty, so you just need to come in and talk to Bill.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you
we'll,
very much.
we'll get going with that next week. Yes.
All righty, next on the agenda is the annual plan.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in.
But, what we have with the annual plan is, this is something I didn't get as soon as I preferred to and I have in the past. But, okay, where's that? In here somewhere. But, okay. And then that's the annual report. Many things okay, I know what okay.
Priorities.
Yeah, the priorities, yeah, setting up the priorities, yep. Some priorities. But, yeah, so it'd be based on the priorities, and I have 4 items I've identified. Zoning board members can pipe in for anything else, but there's 4 items, as right now it's the permit software. We've had the presentation of both from both Schneider and then also iWorks to the commissioners. I need to now make arrangements with, there's 2 big things to do with that, is to, I have the contacts were provided with other people, for other jurisdictions, so that I can go ahead and then speak with them about, number one, where they are in the process, because what I specifically asked for is someone who's going through the process, someone who's had it for a while, a short period of time than the other one. So the main one is find out what sort of hiccups they've had, how things have been resolved, and how happy they are with it. And iWorks in particular is that every one that they have is they use the WTH. So that's a big one for me, is making sure how well it integrates with WTH. Or provide that.
Brian had asked me a while back, and I had told him no. He asked if I had worked in any counties that have the software, and I had told him no. But actually, once I started paying attention, nearly every county that I do work in has it, but not for the special exceptions, which is usually what I'm working on there. So it's odd that like I didn't even see that was a thing until and yes, it's very obvious that like almost all the administrative stuff goes through there.
So both Schneider and iWork, they are capable. They both have the capability of include petitions in that, and so to also finally allow us to then do take electronic payments. So that's the first item. Oh yeah, and then I need to. It's going to take a lot more time than I would like, but it's going to be revising the permit applications based on what we now have with the county fee schedule, with the base fee. So I'm going to need to ask additional information and, for the permits. So that way they'll be ready when they make a decision and contract signed. I have the information from the permits. And I will also need to put together then for them, because it can also set it up to where they can also enter the information. We can set it up so enter the information, I do my inspections. So when I do an inspection, is that, okay, I can record it, and then I'd have the opportunity to both the property owner and then also someone like Mr. Fisher, a contractor, where I can email in the results. And then I can also then take photographs and then send in the photographs if I find a problem. So both are capable of doing that. Okay, the second one, and I think the really big one we need to work on, is also the solar energy ordinance. I don't think that we're in, as far as the language, I think for the most part is, the one with the Marshall County as the model is it's probably considered the best one adopted by any jurisdiction for the solar energy. So then it'd also be a matter of then also speaking with, doing site visits to, with the ordinance that have been adopted. Number one is to the problems they had with the ordinance, problems they've had with the, not only with the ordinance, but also going through the special exception process. And another one will be to, I'm going to ask for the information that they have, that, number one, that remonstrators, whether it's what they've put forward, and then also the information that counters from the, runs counter to, that's been used to, dispel any misconceptions about solar energy. So I think it's a reasonable goal then to shoot for that for the November 17th hearing. As we do the November 17th, we can conceivably then get that adopted in before the end of the year, sometime in December. So that's what I'd like to do with that. And once again, then it's revising the, at some point, and I just need to sit down and then, based on with whatever Carrie has so far as the rules of procedure. Then I have had some conversations with, there's some other codes, some other code sections, as he put it, after we had about the, some of the low-hanging fruit. But I don't know if we call it low-hanging fruit, but it's things that need to be taken care of anyway. And those are all right there. Now, if there's anything that the zoning board members think should be a priority outside of that list, we can add that to the priorities, and then we have a discussion over this, and then I can put it together as for the, put that together as the annual plan.
Looks good.
Okay. Nobody has any questions, I guess, the director's report. But one thing I want to point out that I did with this director's report, it's a rough estimate, but had the new county APC fee schedule been in place, it would have generated about an additional $13,700. And we won't really know to what point that might be until we see what happens over the course of this next year. And so whether or not, and so one thing that really, as far as the cost to me, is that is because it's really just is factored in basically doing the inspections on my actual pay, but it doesn't calculate and figure in the other expenses the county has with me regarding benefits. So I mean, those are things, in my mind, those things should probably be considered, because that's still a cost to the county. But yeah, so we're back up in the total numbers with 2019. We had a bit of course, we had a dip last year, and but interestingly, when you look at the improvement location permits, you'll see that number is lower. That just indicates that there's been fewer permits, 2021 than 2020. But the difference is on the building permits, so they've been larger projects. And some of that may also very well be on the residential side, additional cost related to the run-up in materials cost. Any questions from anybody about any of the things in here?
The only thing it's not really for me to say because it's the APC's, role, but it would worry me to have that goal for November, knowing our propensity to postpone and table and continue, and to me it seems like that should probably be in August or September to give you a chance to not be able to have the meeting, and then then have the meeting, and then have a lot of people come, and then have to table the meeting, and then have the meeting again, and then have the commissioners have the meeting, and then table it, and.
Yeah, well,
And then the county, and then the city council will have something different, and then the commissioners,
yeah, because the main one I had with that was because at an outside point. I'd really like to do it beforehand, but,
yeah, that was the only, and
Yeah.
again, it's not our job, it's a
yeah, and,
unsolicited advice on my
yeah,
behalf.
and, well, and as I think.
Shocking, I know.
I think that most of what we have is really kind of in place. Is that, then I think with the area plan commission, what I would recommend to the area plan commission is that, okay, we start with what we have, and then it's just, then discussion, say breaking it out, and then one section multiple sections at a time is just go through the sections and then just talk about those among the members of the area plan commission. And I think the more that is, the better discussion we have at those meetings, the more I think it'll help elicit, or hopefully more comments, because I'd like to elicit as many comments from people.
We talked
before-
about
before we-
that ordinance
before we-
for months,
Yeah.
and everyone seemed shocked. I mean, months on end, we talked about it.
Yeah.
I understand your point, but I'm not,
Yeah, but, but I think it's just, and it's such a huge ordinance. I mean, and with just a lot of the things in it, there's a lot of complexity, but I just think that, and I think when we have the plan commission meeting this evening, we can talk about the schedule for having, because every meeting, part of it needs to be discussed. Because ideally, I'd like to get as much comments, try to elicit comments rather than all the comments coming out at the public hearing.
okay.
Yeah. But we would see how that happens. But,
Okay. Take a motion on the director's report.
yeah, annual report, director's report, yep.
I'm going to approve as presented.
Second.
Been made and properly seconded to approve the director's report as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. And next is the adjournment, unless anybody has anything to discuss tonight.
I'm going to adjourn.
Motion
Just,
made and properly
just you and Bev, just make sure everything gets signed and passed down to me.
All right, got that.
All those in
Taken care
favor
of.
of adjournment?
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting's adjourned.
call the January 27th, 2022 APC meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Darren Price.
Here.
Leota King.
Here.
Brian Durham.
Here.
Dale Munson.
Here.
Gary Naylor.
Here.
Robert Stewart.
Here.
Brian Robb.
Here.
Bill Mackey.
Here.
Darryl Drew.
Here.
Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Wessling.
Present.
And myself.
Okay. So approval of the April 26th minutes, August, September, and October are the minutes that we have. I would entertain a motion to approve those.
Second.
Okay. Been moved in second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes passed. We have no new members. On to the election of officers. So we'll open nominations for president.
I nominate Bob Stewart.
So, are you declining, Bob?
Yeah. I mean, I'm willing to continue. I mean, it does not bother me any to.
But thank you, Leota. I need another job, thanks.
I nominate Brian to continue.
Any other nominations? Do I have a motion to close nominations?
So moved.
I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motions are closed. On the motion of myself continuing as president, do I have a motion to vote on that? I mean, Robert's Rules of Order tells us we have to, so. Because we closed nominations, now we
Just vote.
just vote. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Vice President. Yeah. I nominate Gary Naylor as Vice President.
Second.
Any other nominations?
Move to close.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Vote for Gary as Vice President. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Gary's Vice President. Secretary.
I nominate Bev Rude.
Second.
Any other nominations? Motion to close nominations.
So moved.
Second, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nominations are closed. On Bev Rude continuing as secretary. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bev gets to continue to be secretary.
Okay.
On to appointments. Appointment of executive director.
Bill McDaniel.
I was gonna say, that pause had me concerned.
You're good.
Any other nominations?
I was trying to figure out who that was.
Okay, all those in favor of Bill continuing as executive director signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill continues as executive director.
You mean you don't think we should have a roll call vote on that?
Actually, I'd be afraid to do the roll call vote. Yeah, I don't want you guys to discuss that any more than you did.
The APC attorney who also serves as the BZA attorney.
Jeff Wessling.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of continuing Jeff Wessling as our attorney, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Jeff continues to be our attorney. APC citizen appointee to the BZA.
It's currently Darren.
Darren is currently that, and there's only three eligible or four eligible?
Yeah, actually, 3, because Leota's appointed as both.
Great.
So it's just strictly the citizen appointees, which would be Darren,
Myself.
Gary, and it would be Brian.
Darren, do you want to keep me in
I
BZA?
have no problem with that.
Okay.
I'd nominate Darren to continue then.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Darren continues as our representative, the APC representative to the BZA. Annual plan, where'd that document go?
Yeah. And
Thank you, Darren.
the city's in the process with the city comprehensive plan, but it's the, trying to identify members, and it meant to ask with the BZA, but if there's any board member who might be interested in, I think it would be advisable, other than just me representing the Area Plan Commission on the steering committee, and another Plan Commission member, and if, and ideally, it would probably be best if it's someone that's a city appointment for that. So if you're interested, please just send me an email, and then I'll forward it to the, as a member for the steering committee. And it doesn't require a lot of time. Well, there's going to be multiple meetings, but not a huge number of meetings. So and if anybody's interested, please also include any things that you have would make your time constraint.
I have this priorities for 2022.
Yep.
Talk about that. Permit software. We've had at least two
Yeah,
companies at
we've
least.
had Schneider and iWork. Now, where I stand with that is that we had the interviews. I still need to now, the presentations, I still need to speak with people that have the, jurisdictions that have adopted both the Schneider and then also the iWork for it. And the iWork, as everybody they've provided with me also, they integrate with WTH. So just to contact others, and right now Franklin County is going through the process with iWork, and they do have WTH in the front end, so that'd be a good person for me to speak with.
Right. No, absolutely.
And then just the other things that go hand in hand with that is going to be the things I would need to do as far as the applications and the what needs to be done for the permits. And both of them can set it up, so, and I don't know how smoothly it would work yet. But if not a concurrent application going through this office, they should be able to insert then the links for everybody else but the county and then the city as far as permits.
Right.
For example, is that way when it comes time for an address in the city, they can, ideally then, if there'd be a form then they can link to, then submit that to the city. Be the same thing with the water, the sewer, the sand, the drainage, and also the same things with the address with Bill Mackey for the county, and then well and septic with Matt Shirk, and then drive permits with the highway department. So it's conceivably that, and just a long time from the very start of, even when I started grad school in the mid-90s, the conversation was always about how do you streamline? And without being an electronic system, it is really hard to streamline, but this gives an opportunity with the software to really streamline everything between this office and then others at least need, so they can apply concurrently for other permits.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Moving to the software would really, put us at the early stages of the 21st century, at least moving in that direction where if you're from out of town and you're trying, to build something here, at times it can be difficult. You know, you have to wait for somebody to email you something and then you scan it back and,
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of eliminates that process and,
Yeah, so it works out pretty well as far as I work with what I do to work with people on that. So that really isn't a problem, but it'd be nice to actually, the big one with people is people are used to doing online payments. And then there's there's someone else that they use in the permitting process to handle the payments, and then the processing fee then actually goes to the person that's applying for the
Right.
permit and paying online, so.
no additional fee changes from county side to incur
Exactly.
that fee.
And then we really won't know until the end of the year if there need to be any adjustments to the fee schedule, and whether up or down, but once we have a year's worth of data, that will help us out.
So I think that's a priority.
Yeah.
I want to skip to number 4 because there are certain sections in that. Review of other code sections, amendments, accessory uses, accessory dwelling units, parking, permitted uses and special exceptions that we can really work on and make headway of this year. One in particular, I think, is the home occupation, changing those rules. I think COVID really showed us that there's a need to work from home. Our rules actually don't allow you to work from home without a special exception, and I can attest that I know several people who broke that during COVID, so we at least have to be
Yeah.
adaptive for those types of rules that don't make sense anymore.
Yeah, because if you recall, is before COVID hit, I had a draft pretty well put together. And it's based on different types of tiers, and then it also takes into consideration whereas something might be appropriate out in the county as a home occupation, but it certainly wouldn't in the city. And,
And then working on accessory dwelling units, especially as certain segments of our population are aging, and to allow, an accessory unit on a house so that mom, dad, grandma, grandpa can live there. Our parking requirements seem to be exorbitant. Noticed last year, I think we had 3 variances on parking, particularly because it required so much square footage for parking. I think changing those rules are a priority, or easing those rules, and looking through our special exceptions. What do we have, 68 of them, 67 of
yeah,
them?
we have a lot of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Some might not be as relevant as they once were, or
or if they were ever relevant.
or ever relevant for
That was for your benefit, Gary.
Yeah, for a particular use. Who knows why certain things were done. Number 2 on that priority is a solar energy ordinance. I think we need to have it well before November of 2022. I think we need to have something ready March or April. I think we're that close anyway from our previous discussions, that I think we can have that by March or April.
But I think what we should probably do with the plan commission is start out with what we have right now as far as with the drafting, and then have a good discussion each month on section by section. So hopefully we'll elicit public comments before we get to a public hearing, but that remains to be seen.
And if you guys remember, it's been, I think it was October or November of last year, the draft discussion that Bill had sent out. It is a bit lengthy. It's 11 pages, but to look through that, it's really the model solar ordinance.
And those 11 pages also includes all my comments.
Yes.
But, so it's taken into consideration everything from each of the individual types of classes, from a small personal use, actually is the encouraging other uses with, under a certain size, really, it's just being used to power small things, not needing it. All the way up to what point when there's just a regular permit, what I need with my permits for the house, because right now treating them as an electric upgrade. I wouldn't like to call them out separately and then have some separate, different requirements. Because the one thing I do is if it's going to be on roof, and it's a matter of fact, the companies do anyway, is a structural assessment of the integrity of the roof before they will actually install it. Because I did have one, whereas they had to go with an on-the-ground unit because the analysis from the engineer showed that the roof was old enough and there were enough problems structurally that they weren't about to put it on the roof. So it's a common sense thing to have. The engineer taking the look at it.
So if you guys have a chance before our February meeting to look over that, any questions or comments, concerns, to bring them at our February meeting. It'll be much like our original CAFO discussion where we'll talk through the ordinance line by line, and anything that you have that's of particular interest that you want to bring up, we'll look at it at that time. I think it's something that we need to get done this year.
Yeah, and because I think an important part is also going to be that with myself, maybe Brian, and then maybe a couple of other people, is we can arrange meetings in some of the different jurisdictions that have adopted, solar ordinances, and the problems they've had with theirs going through the process, or any things they would have changed in theirs. They didn't think of, or if they felt that after the fact overstepped the bounds. Then the other one would be then also finding out is jurisdictions that have gone through actual process, the approval process for solar farms would be the successful ones, but I think it'd probably be more instrumental in probably more than the positive, is then the problems that they ran into in any that was actually rejected, or particular importance would be any then that have gone through the court process, the challenges. So that'd be important for us to also, as we're going through this. So it's but yeah.
Bill,
Yeah.
also, I think it's gonna be, or could be important that we also maybe look at our adjacent counties
Yeah.
and their solar plan, if they do have any. I was wondering, would that be too much of a problem for you to contact our adjacent counties?
No. Okay.
And if they've got copies, get copies of their,
No, I can certainly do that. That is not a problem.
and maybe email that out to everybody?
Yeah, I can do that, and then I'll send back out to everybody where we stand with the one that's based on the Indiana model ordinance.
Yeah, and I guess I'm thinking back to, with the windmill project, it entailed the possibility of 3 counties.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for that company to try to deal with all 3 counties and their ordinances
3 different
pertaining,
sets of rules.
3 different sets of rules,
Yeah.
and trying to lay out their farm and so on and so forth. And I thought, well, it'd make good sense if we could
Yeah.
stay close to our adjacent counties.
Yeah. And because I also have someone who has, he was the zoning administrator in Henry County. He then worked for a not-for-profit for solar energy. And I think he'd be I've already spoken with him, he'd be willing to then just speak to us in general about, with the wind energy, how things have changed. And then I think the things that are probably misinformation that's out there is we also need to get on the front end of that well before a public hearing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that the plan commission members can have all the actual peer-reviewed, data-based studies on whether, anything with it. And particularly the risk of contamination, any type of contamination. And so
And I also think that we need to put the word out. We need to determine whether Fayette County wants to be a solar-friendly
yeah,
county or not
yeah,
in the beginning. Because if this board goes through all the time consumed of writing an ordinance and creating an ordinance that's friendly to solar companies to come to Fayette County, And Fayette County doesn't want solar, then we've wasted our time.
Yeah.
And we've created a lot of chaos, like our wind project.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess I'm of the opinion, why invent a wheel that
Yep.
maybe the community doesn't want?
Yeah, and it's and it's in the awareness with that, well, it's kind of a understood maxim that it's not just planning, but it's with most things, as you know, with city government and county government, that the voices that are the loudest are frequently out of proportion with the number of people who, because a lot of people, we found out, a lot of people, if they support something, if I don't like it, that's when people tend to come out. It's just having an awareness of that.
And that is,
Yeah.
that's very true, Bill.
Yep.
And Gary, in addition to not only utility scale solar, just like if you want to put it at your house or
Yeah.
where in your yard is it appropriate, and those sort of things kind of need to be ironed out as well.
Yeah.
Just that,
Yeah,
you don't want somebody with a bunch of solar panels in their front yard per se. So when
Yeah.
your setbacks for everything else don't include the front yard,
yeah.
just to be in line with other accessory structures and whatever.
Some what I would consider non-solar issues, but things that come a part of this that you guys should be thinking about are, there's going to be an approval of a road use agreement. You should be looking at who should approve that. To me, it makes sense for that to either be the county highway department or the street department, depending on what jurisdiction the solar panels would be going in. Maybe they don't necessarily approve it, but they give a preferential or either an opinion on it. Okay. And then there's going to be the decommissioning agreement, which is a big deal in these. Maybe not as big a deal in these as it is in wind, but it's still a big deal. That probably my recommendation would be that we present a recommendation to the commissioners or the city council, depending again what jurisdiction it's in, and they would then make the ultimate decision on entering into that contract that they're satisfied with that decommissioning agreement. Because what will happen is each project will have a different decommissioning agreement. Okay. And so that's, to me, that's always best left to elected officials. I think we should have a strong opinion because we might have more information, more knowledge on the subject. But I think it's beneficial for the elected officials to actually make that, because that's impacting other people.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the whole point of that.
Because I think one of the things we had, the model that we followed with the solar energy, was that those agreements came after the fact, the public hearing, rather than getting up front on the agreements.
Those should be negotiated
Yeah.
and get to a point before you ever approve a project.
Yeah.
Okay, those should get to a point you
Yes.
can't.
So it would probably
So
then.
otherwise, the building permit would be contingent upon those agreements.
Correct, absolutely
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely
So-
correct.
Yes, okay, so you could approve the special exception,
Yes, but you
But
can't issue the permit until.
no
until the
permit
road
is
use
issued
agreement-
until those are all in place. Yeah.
Now, would that fall for individual homes as well as large scale?
No, don't be only for the one that trigger what is determined as the appropriate threshold for a special exception. And then whether you, some places treat it differently, say with, you also see urban solar farms used as infill projects. And really, it's brownfield projects. Because it might be more appropriate use in some situations to have an urban solar farm than if you have heavily contaminated or very old structures that really aren't suitable for what people are looking for. Well, what could be done to actually encourage those to be something else? Because what an advantage, for example, would be if there was I'm not saying to do this, but as an example would be, say, the old industrial park. Because what you have right there is because one of the things when they're looking for solar farms for land for the project is proximity. I don't really know what the distance is, the ideal distance or the maximum distance that isn't feasible for them. But you have the substation down there on Illinois, which is which I think is a really great location. Then I think the other largest substation we have, of course, is the one that's out on 200 West. So,
And to get to your point, I think more specifically, the reason a commercial project requires a road use agreement and a decommissioning agreement versus a residential is that a residential program, there's not a decommissioning agreement necessary because it's their property, they own the solar panels, they're gonna decommission them or keep them or whatever.
Right.
This is somebody else that owns something on other people's properties, and then the road use agreement, obviously, a resident, that's not gonna be.
Yeah, I was thinking more of the
Right.
decommissioning. rather
And,
than the
and
road
it's,
use.
it made sense with wind for the road use agreement, and it doesn't, right off the top of your head, make sense to have a road use agreement for solar because they're not these monstrous big things.
Not heavy equipment.
But you are going to have a significant amount of semis and heavy carriers on country roads that are not generally equipped for that. So that's why you have the road use agreement, just to, as
Yeah,
a way to
well,
repair those roads and.
At the time that they were doing the one out at the school, I was by there quite frequently, and you see how much traffic is really there when they're installing.
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, so like I said, and one of the keys will be, the threshold with, say, when it's a large scale, but might not be a commercial project, but at what point is it really appropriate then to, say, require going through this process? Because it's, and,
But
yeah.
should, Jeff, should we address somehow the removal of the unused properties or the unused equipment? And I go back to probably before your time, when we had the big 10, 12-foot satellite dish receivers, and they became obsolete, and we drove all through the city and all through the county and saw these 10-foot, we had to put up with these unsightly satellite dishes that people just abandoned, and they didn't discard them. Well, if they're forced to especially go, it won't be as sightly if they're on the roof, but if they're forced to go on the ground with ground units, and they become obsolete or whatever.
Yeah, well, I think there's language that relates to that then in the model ordinance.
And I think, I mean, that's part of the decommissioning,
Yeah.
I mean, as well. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that people just don't leave them.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure that we do
Yeah.
try to address some of it anyway on a residential use. To take care of the neighbors.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Sure.
One of the priorities that's kind of on here but not, looking for softballs that are, easy for us to make changes to and whatnot, or potentially easy to make changes to. We're very restrictive on allowing businesses in rural areas in our zoning code. Like if you want to open a business in the county, the zoning code isn't very friendly to that
No.
whatsoever. Outside of Everton, I think is like really the only place that has like a business district in it if you wanted to open a business, and maybe creating more friendly rules for our rural areas to be more friendly to business if you wanted a small shop.
Yeah, well,
or a home base.
I think one of the things is looking at it also as because I think that for so long, when everybody thought, rural economic activity was always associated with farming, especially someplace like Fayette County. But if you stop thinking about as far as, you start thinking about not just agriculture and economic development, but you look at it as a bigger picture as rural. And it's identifying what is really suitable. In a rural area. So there's things that can be done definitely with that. And as I think some people have been around long enough know that I've always had an issue with the bed and breakfast. Because it's only allowed in an R3, general business, local business district, and the medical services. Then when you look at the description, it's that, well, it's to be located in places historically historically and architecturally significant structures. And that, well, when you look at most of them in the area in Connersville, which really fits that bill is basically from the, between Grand and Central Avenue, then going up, Virginia, basically up to that, between Grand, Virginia Central, down to the railroad tracks, and then up, because that's the sort of thing. Because what Sarah Over had to do in order to have her B&B, she had to get a rezone to an R3. And so she had that for the B&B, and then she had got a home occupation then for the hairdressing. And so the only way conceivably you could have a B&B, or, and always think about, okay, how many of you remember the Newhart, the inn? So it isn't possible in Fayette County, the way those rules are written with rural, would be good rural-oriented businesses, that you can't put a B&B in out there in the rural areas. You can't put without a zoning change. You can't have a rural inn. You can't have a B&B out in the A1 or the A2 district, which I don't think is very beneficial. I mean, it's to not have it, but it's looking at things along those lines that, because you look at the southern part of the county, is that, it's, people love to move down there. People love to be down in the south part of the county, and it'd be a good location if you're gonna have businesses like that. So,
And I guess I don't disagree with you, Bill, but on the other hand, I don't want to give our A1 and A2
yeah,
zonings away.
Right.
no,
These would be like
We've already
existing-
done
yeah,
that
this would
to
be
a certain
existing.
extent.
yeah,
This would be like if something that is already, like if you had a farm, say you have farm ground, you have a farmhouse that you don't plan on living in.
yeah.
you
So
wanna
you
have
can
a-
convert it to an inn, basically, yeah. But, yeah,
Without
yeah,
rezoning it.
yeah, things that are, work with the character of the rural areas of the county, that type of thing.
Well, can that fall under the home occupation and
Well,
Yeah.
if they're gonna live there, you could possibly do it.
and with the businesses and everything, could we modify the home occupation so that it's attached to that that partial, but not
Okay.
that house?
Well,
Because doesn't the business have to be attached to the house?
and they have approved it also in the past in, say, with an accessory building. So, but if they aren't gonna live there, well, another approach to that is if because right now the B&B is it's a special exception. So that might be one as far as when you're looking at the expand B&B to, inns, guest houses, and you look at the definitions, it has for that particular description, a certain number of units. That might, because a good rationale for then requiring go through the home occupation is that if you're gonna have more rooms, you're gonna have lodging, well, they're gonna have to go to MAT, or will they have to go to the state of Indiana, because they're gonna need a larger septic field. And with that, then parking, but there's other things you can make an argument for, it probably should go in front of the zoning board. Because, you can allow them, but the whole idea with this special exception is, it might be a good idea, but just that extra level of scrutiny.
I guess I was thinking mechanic shops, furniture store, or factories, and retail furniture. Some of the Amish businesses,
Basically, natural, yeah.
if you're willing to live there, they're gonna take care of it.
Yeah, yeah.
It may be an outbuilding.
Well,
but
yeah, it could be, for some of those things they could. Now, the biggest constraint that we'd actually have is once you get up to if it's 30,000 cubic feet, then you get into the fire space, the fire
Right,
volume.
right, yeah.
So then if you get up to the 30,000 cubic feet, well, then it's gotta be engineered. Then you have, it's 10,000 square feet, which would be a pretty darn big shop, but then we get into the whole sprinkling issue. So you can still have, you can still be of a size that doesn't need sprinkling, because that's floor plan. But you might need to have, 30,000 cubic feet. So you could set as that, okay, at what size then is appropriate then for a home occupation or something like that? When does
Versus
it need another level of
special
scrutiny?
exception,
Yeah.
And those are all things, we'll work on throughout this year, like.
Yeah.
There'll
But
be
yeah,
questions that we'll
it's
answer.
it's definitely one, because you and I have had multiple conversations about that.
And looking at our rules and procedures, I think we really just have to go through and see if there's things that make muddy waters or don't necessarily apply verbatim any longer. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just good to look at our rules and procedures on an annual to make sure that,
Yeah.
Clean them up as you can go
yeah,
along.
yeah, when something changes, that way,
Well,
The
we
ball
already
doesn't
know
get
some of the
dropped.
things that we need to change.
along the way, much like our discussion yesterday on animals and whatnot, so.
But,
I think that's a good,
oh yeah, if you want to, is that you can talk about the things that we started off in 2020 that we did actually accomplish.
fee schedule. We got the fee schedule removed from the zoning code and added, as the commissioners approved,
Commissioners and city council both.
approved that.
And that is effective January 1.
We finished the CFO ordinance last year. Trying to remember what all we did last year as far as rules,
Yeah, it's
procedure.
because it's I mean,
We wrote a solar ordinance that is not approved, but we at least got the
Yeah.
ball rolling on writing that.
yeah, I think there's not a lot that really needs to be done to it, but I think Gary has a point, is that see what we have next door to dovetail as close as possible.
The permitting software, moving us up into the 21st century, I think that's huge for everybody, moving us forward in that and getting closer to streamlining a process entirely where you can, a one-stop shop for building. That's huge to be that close. So much like 2 years ago, I mean, when we started talking on the fee schedule 2 years ago, it took a long time to get that out, removed, and our commissioners and city council approving that. So these things move slow, but we're making progress and changes along the way. For instance, our accessory uses, we have, Darren, myself, and Bill worked expansively on accessory uses, on removing things and kind of updating the entirety of that section of the zoning code. We haven't brought that to present yet, but it's taking, changes that make sense in 2022 that maybe made sense in 1993, which was just an adoption from 1967. Not a lot changed from 1967 to 1993 in the zoning code, although a lot changed over that period of time. So we're working on updating.
Yeah.
Yes, Bob?
When you make special exceptions or changes for business, whatever purposes it might be, are these in perpetuity, or do they have,
Okay.
suppose that you've made an exception and it becomes a problem, what's your recourse?
Okay. Maybe Mr. Westland can answer that better than me, but typically they are unless you have some type of provision in there, it's kind of a perpetuity thing. Now, if there isn't a lot of, now, for example, as we always tell people with, things like home occupations and other uses, is that if they fail to meet with certain things, if it's in some uses, it's the BZA giveth and the BZA taketh away. If they're not following the conditions under which some's approved. Now, how did it go about that if it's a project that is involved in substantial investment and they at some point then blow off? I think that's a different problem.
What if they go out of business? Or how are we aware of that? Or can we take it away? Do we take it away at that point in time? Or is it still zoned for that, and for someone else to come in and use?
Yeah, because typically the special exception runs with the property.
So typically, though, other counties, other ordinances have a provision in there that says that if the use were to stop
Okay,
and not
that's
be
what I'm getting
used for
at.
2 years, that you no longer have that special exception. Policing that is, as you can imagine,
But at least
extremely
it gives you
difficult.
something to work with.
It gives you an argument that, hey,
And the neighbors
you're
complain
trying,
about it, well, you haven't
Yeah.
used it for 2 years, we're taking it
and
away.
that's a very simple provision that is found in numerous ordinances that, you
Okay,
know.
that's what I'm
and
asking about.
common sense says if they haven't used it for that use for 2 years, then they should probably have to come back and or
Is
any
it-
period of time, they
Is
should
2
have to
years
come back.
too long? I mean, is a year too long? I mean, what's?
Sure.
yeah.
Well, and conditions can always be set by the Board of Zoning Appeals on anything. They can put conditions to anything on the, you might have to go back and see what the conditions were on that particular special exception, but conditions can be set because they're like, the special exception is,
What
Tell
if
me
we
why you're
grant it?
special.
It doesn't have to go to zoning appeals and we grant it, does it? I mean, if we grant somebody a special exception, it don't have to go
all
to
special
zoning
exception
appeals.
applications go to zoning appeals.
Yeah, the special exceptions are all BZA.
Okay.
But, yeah, so there's things to work with that, and but as Mr. Westling said, is they can be very difficult to enforce, and so if you actually have to then, it's actually, as far as them putting the database together with all of these uses, it'll be a lot easier, well, with the permit software and then also with the GIS, but it's a matter of them building those individual layers of the database, the GIS database.
Well, and then the other piece of that was in bringing this all 30, 50 years into the future is you get it set and then you set a rolling time to go over those and see them rather than waiting 30 years to say, oh, hey, this is no longer viable.
He died 10 years ago and we're still got.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Absolutely. So under number 8, we've already talked about solar energy bill, number 1, CFO response from city council rejection. Do you have that?
Yeah, I handed that out to everybody.
Yeah.
And so basically is primary actions is you can either accept what the city council adopted, what they voted on, which was to reject what was forwarded. Says it was rejected, there were no amendments to it. So if you reject the rejection, it just goes back to the city council one more time and they got to vote on it. Now, Jeff, if the board was to vote to accept, it doesn't need to go back to the city, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
If the board voted no, if the board votes we agree with the city, then it doesn't need to go back to the city.
Yeah.
If the board votes we disagree with the city, it goes back to the city and the city can pass it without your approval.
Yeah, they need it one more time.
They are only controlling their jurisdiction, and their jurisdiction, quite frankly, with CFOs.
Yeah, because what would carry, as far as the confined feeding operations, any place they're gonna go is what the county commissioners adopted.
And the commissioners, what the commissioners adopted, for instance, let's pretend there are no commissioners who voted and we either are passing this ordinance for the entire county or not, the commissioners actually are protecting the city because the one that they passed was more protective for the city than the previous one. That would
Correct.
take effect.
And only one thing was actually reduced from what was forwarded. The only real change as far as going in the opposite direction from what the city adopted was the public use area, which cut it in half, then with the maximum distance of 1,620 feet suitable for a variance. Because otherwise, then because otherwise, what you'd have in place is, if the city was to vote against, once again to reject it, what it goes back to is what the city adopted in September 9th, I believe, it's September 6th or September 9th. Yeah, the ordinance that they adopted with their amendments. So that is the one that's in the records for the city of Connersville.
That's correct.
If I want to build a CAFO in Connors, right?
If you want to build a CAFO in Connors.
Yeah, so, so, like I said, so if the city council, if it goes back to the city council, Mr. Collins, thank you for being here, is that, so if it does go back to the city council, and the city council again votes to reject it, well, all we have in place is we have a minor difference between the city and the county, but the one that carries the load is really what the county commissioners adopted.
That was the part that they didn't understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Have they considered in the CFO, not every well that serves the community is inside the community city limits? How close are you gonna build one to a well, public well?
Okay, well, it meets and it's more than a mile from any of the ones for Connorsville Utilities for their wells. Now, if you're referring to wells that are private individuals, but, so for example, is
Well, about Everton's.
Everything gets their water from city. No,
No,
they,
they don't.
I thought they did.
No, they have their own.
They have their own water supply.
Their sewer is.
Oh, their sewer,
their sewer's
okay.
City,
But, yeah,
pump to the city.
yeah. But,
So does, if we take no action, I mean, nothing really, we're in the
Well,
same boat regardless, correct?
yeah,
Like it's-
if the area plan commission takes no action against what the city council's action regarding the confined feeding, all it does is means that what they rejected, it stays rejected, and what's in place for the city of Connorsville is from September. So,
Okay.
Which is what they voted for, yes, in the first place.
yeah, back in September, so.
So Brian, I'll turn to you on this one. I mean, would you recommend that we take no action that,
That's what I'm thinking as far as.
and you are the city council representative, so
Yeah.
taking no action, I mean, the rules that the commissioners pass,
Right,
you know,
that's my recommendation.
So we would need a motion, Brian, to reject.
Well, you either accept the rejection, which means that it doesn't go back to the city. You reject the rejection, which means it goes back for one more vote to the city council.
And you're saying reject the rejection.
accept
Well-
accept the rejection.
Yeah, if I understand it, because
Yeah.
even if we go back and vote upon it again, and they reject it again, then you're gonna go to what the county said, which was basically the September 1 anyway, wasn't it?
Well,
Other
yeah,
than one,
Right. So what the county, what's going on in the county for KFOs, we cannot change in this meeting right now.
Right.
So we are making a decision that we either want to make the city, we're really doing one of two things. You're either making the city revote on it, or you're not making the city revoting on it and just approving that it goes back to what's there anyway.
Yeah.
and that's what I'm,
Yeah.
So is that a motion?
That's a
Like,
motion.
A motion
Whatever
to
that-
accept
yeah.
the rejection?
Yes.
I-
Except,
we have-
yes.
We have a motion to accept the rejection. I have a second.
Second.
Aaron seconds to accept the rejection. All those in favor of.
Question.
Yes.
Then, if we vote yes for this motion that's on the floor, then does that create two ordinances?
Correct.
Yeah, it's.
There is an ordinance for the city jurisdiction, a CAFO ordinance for the city jurisdiction, and a CAFO ordinance for the county jurisdiction.
Now, the one for the
But
city
if we
jurisdiction
voted
is,
no, it would
still-
go back to the city,
And then they would.
they'd have to reaffirm it.
Yeah.
And there's still two.
and there's still two.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's two.
There's
yeah,
nothing
two-
we can do
at this
tonight to
point,
have
there's
this.
two, no matter
It
what.
ends up being two regardless. So we have
I guess that
a,
simplifies that a little bit.
yeah. We have a motion on the floor to accept the rejection. We have a second to accept the rejection. How about a roll call vote?
Okay. Darren Price,
Yes.
Leota King,
I'm totally confused. The more you talk, the less I understand.
So we're accepting the city's rejection. We're voting to accept that they rejected
Okay, so they're going to have, you're gonna have two CAFO
Yeah,
ordinances, one for the city and one for the county.
Yeah.
And accepting the rejection, okay,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, because it really isn't going to have any effect.
And voting yes puts us to bed.
Yes.
Okay.
Safe to say.
Yes,
Yes, put it to bed.
And uniquely, I don't know that this was the intention, but uniquely, the county's ordinance will be more restrictive for CAFOs than the city's ordinance.
Yeah. Which is.
I think that's an unintended consequence, or like,
Right, they
that's,
didn't understand that when.
right. But under all circumstances, the county's CAFO ordinance will be more restrictive, more difficult to get a CAFO in than the city's would be.
Correct.
And that's
Okay,
primarily
Leota.
courtesy of Gary's amendment.
yes.
Okay. Leota votes yes. Brian Durham,
Yes.
Dale Munson,
Yes.
Gary Naylor,
Yes.
Robert Stewart,
Yes.
Brian Robb,
Yes.
Bill Mackey,
Yes.
Darryl Drew.
Yes.
That's it.
And
Good, I don't have to go back to the city council next week.
yesterday, the last thing on our work agenda under annual plan, the chicken committee met. Myself, Dale, Brian, and Gary met with the community members as part of that. Through the work that we discussed in that meeting and with Jeff's help, cleared up some language. It's really to recommend to change some language in a, what was that, ordinance number 96-1, to change the word dog and cats to animals.
Actually, in the ordinance that I read, it,
Well, that's the city's, the
Oh,
city's
yeah,
is
okay,
fine. The
okay,
county's
okay, right,
96-1
okay.
to change the word dog and cat
Right,
to animal.
right.
That way, Mr. Rickman, who is the animal control officer right now in charge
Clearly
of
has
that,
authority
so
to
that,
confiscate, yeah.
it's more black and white for him than gray on just cats and dogs, as the county is currently says. So it's,
And also, we asked Jeff to work on updating the city's Chapter 99 ordinance reference to the animals to make sure that our animal control officer is able to carry out that ordinance.
yeah.
it's not 99, I don't think.
Oh,
I think it's,
It's 98 point,
is it 98?
yeah,
Okay,
or 91, it's 91, because when you
Yeah.
said 90, I was looking at it, I think it's 91.
okay,
And
I
it's
apologize.
It tells in here, as Brian and I were talking, it just needs to be where he's given, it says, it kind of, says he's the one that's the authority part, but doesn't really kind of spell out, and that needs to be just
Yeah.
verified,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, so even though, so it was a fruitful meeting, because we really had a discussion we weren't going to be able to have at a plan commission meeting. And so we came away with it is I was pleased with the results. And I know Mr. Rickman's pleased with the results because he has clarity. And I'm pleased with the results, but it's like I said, you start off with something, it's easier to start off with something than pull parts out or necessarily pull the whole thing out than starting out with not enough.
So Jeff, do we need a motion to make that recommendation, or just, that's our recommendation, is to accept the
There's
chicken
no need
committee's?
for a recommendation. I think I just tell them to, talk to your elected.
Well, we got two of them here.
Because the commissioners made a formal request, we don't have to send back a
No, we don't.
formal answer?
Oh, well, formal, they didn't, I guess we didn't.
Yeah,
have a
that's what-
discussion.
yeah.
Yeah, it might be, I forgot, but they did make a
Yeah,
request.
so
It
I
wouldn't
would
be a bad idea
entertain
to-
a
Yeah.
motion to accept the chicken committee's request for language changes,
In the existing ordinances.
in the existing.
So moved.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
Are we making it easier to raise chickens or not?
Not
Nothing
changing it at
changing.
all.
It's basically
The
a
two changes are, I'll make it very clean and succinct. The two changes are, in the county, there is an issue about an animal at large, and it lists dogs and cats, which means you can't take somebody's goat, you can't, if it's running a buffalo, elephant, whatever.
Camel.
We're gonna change that to all animals.
If
So
you
that's the
heard
only
about an
change.
elephant, you died of COVID-19
Right.
anyways.
So in the county,
we'll just bury it on the same hill as
in
the
the
other one.
county, it only changes the idea of an animal at large, whether or not the animal control officer can seize that animal for the time being, okay?
Yes.
And then in the city, There is some debate about whether or not, it says law enforcement shall get the animal, an at-large animal. Clearly, we want to add animal control officer in that language, so that's it.
Designated
That's it.
animal
Yeah,
control.
that's it.
And that's any animal.
Any animal, yeah, that's at
running
large. Correct.
At large.
A chicken, a goat, an elephant, a coyote, whatever. I don't think there's anybody that disagrees with the notion that if you have an animal and he has left your property and is not leashed or caged,
Well, we got
somebody
cats
should
up
know we
abuse
get
in
it.
addition.
They
They drop them there.
So no change to chicken ability or inability, just maybe clarity on what the animal control officer can do.
Yes, it's
Some
basic,
semantics really, because I think it says dog warden and it's now animal control
Animal
officer.
control, okay.
yeah,
So
so
we
it,
have
yeah, so basically it's a status quo as far as the animals go, but it's just clean, fixing language so that Mr. Rickman then can.
Keep your pet pig locked up.
Yeah. So we have a motion from Gary. Do I have a second?
Second.
From Brian. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and motion passes. The director's report, the annual report, if you've had a chance to review to see, I think Bill included what
Okay,
projected
yeah,
fees would have been under.
Yeah, so approximately is, if the current county fee schedule is, I mean, it's a really rough estimate, is that based on the type of actual use it was, that had the permits, and it's approximately would have generated about another $13,721.55. So now what it might be is after then at the end of the year, we'll have more information as to whether that's sufficient, whether it's too much, any other sort of adjustments that might need to be made, which makes it easier to make adjustments any direction because it's a county ordinance. And it can be in effect because both the county commissioners and the city council, they both approve the amendments for striking the various code language out of the subdivision regulations of the zoning code. Now, one to complete had the conversation with Mr. Westling, it took care of my concerns over the appeals process, and so it's a matter then of getting that in place, making those, sending that up to the state of Indiana, and so then we can get those approved by the state of Indiana. Then once the Homeland Security finds that there is no problems versus the Indiana code, it's consistent with the Indiana code, they approve it. Then the city council will then have to hold a hearing because it requires being an actual county ordinance and a city ordinance. And then the county commissioners have to hold a hearing on the zoning code ordinance, the adoption ordinance, and then the county would have to do the same. And because of the difference is from state code with planning law, is the area plan commission does not have the authority to be the one to hold the public hearing. We can make a recommendation and forward it for the public hearing, such as with those changes regarding animals. Yeah, sure.
We have subdivisions throughout the community. When these subdivisions are built, some of them's 50, 60, 70 years old, they had covenants.
Yep.
Those covenants many times now are for no purpose, no use, because they've gone beyond just solar or whatever. Where does the city and county come in where they can change the covenants of the subdivision?
Cannot do it.
It's outdated.
Cannot do it.
That's contract that, we can't.
That's
Yeah,
The
that-
developer's dead. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and the people that originally
Yeah.
owned there aren't there
The
anymore.
people who live in that are the ones with the, if we're neighbors and there's something in your neighborhood that I'm doing that you don't like and it's against the covenants, it's on you to sue me as an individual.
You know,
Well, Bob,
that's what I'm saying, the
Bob,
covenants are now probably outdated, and what can we do about it? We
well,
can't.
okay, what you can do is, you've seen enough of the covenants where it says right down there as far as amending the covenants, preparing an instrument to change the covenants. Well, it needs typically, most of the time, it's 70% of the actual property owners within the subdivision. So that's the process that would need to be followed. If you have a sufficient number of members of the subdivision that want to change the covenants. So it's beholden upon those who live in the subdivision to make the change.
Most of them don't even know what the covenants are anymore.
Oh, I know that's a problem.
And I'm wondering if the city or the governing body can have any effect as far as,
We can't get rid of them.
yeah.
No, it's as far as the covenants go, and, it's like some of them have, language where
I didn't know.
they're essentially readopted in every so many years, readopted on its own in perpetuity. There's others where after a period of time where they're abandoned. It all depends upon the covenants that were written at the time they were written.
But are you aware of what each subdivision's covenants are?
I can find the copies.
Well, I'm gonna say because someone might wanna put a pole barn up,
Well-
and then they find out later on that it was against the covenant 50 years ago.
Well, there's a case that happened shortly after I started, around 2000 when Gary was on the commissioners. Okay, now, my predecessor issued a permit for a huge honking pole barn, is also closer than it violated the setbacks for the covenant, because out there in Woodside Village, the covenants are more than what the setbacks on the covenants are more than the zoning code, so those are what actually carry.
Did he?
So,
Who was it?
what happened with that is that, so my predecessor issued this permit, Mr. McGraw came in, it's like, you gotta go to court to have him remove it, and that's what he did, because it was big.
Sure, that's what I'm talking about, just.
But your predecessor was
His property?
in perfect line of the law.
Yeah.
Exactly. Now,
He issued the permit under the county's zoning laws.
But not the covenant.
Exactly. So what?
But it's not his.
What I will do is I will tell people if I'm aware that they want to build something's in violation, because
Check the covenant.
yeah, I said, you do realize that this is in violation of the covenants. Now, someone who's always very good about it was Mr. Darvin. When someone builds something that's in violation of the covenants. So what would happen? Yes, they've got to enforce, and so I do mention to people, I said, you probably want to talk to the developer before you get a permit for this, to make sure he's gonna have a problem with it.
You may not even be alive anymore, so.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, in the case with the covenants, there's his descendants, and they're still operating through the realty companies,
I
and still
think it's
being
called
managed.
sunshine laws, aren't they?
For things that expire, yeah. But with nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Brian,
moved.
I have one more question
Yes, sir.
before we adjourn. We had a couple big projects last year that we issued, I think BZA issued exceptions on. The multifamily dwelling apartment complex up on the north end.
Okay, that's,
Do you have anything new on it? or-
don't have anything new with that, because they got what they needed to, because they needed to have this in place to qualify for the various grants.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they've gotten the grants or not, because.
So they haven't moved to the building?
Yeah, exactly.
Process.
So I haven't seen any design releases, there hasn't been anything submitted to me about commencing the project.
Okay. And then the other bigger project was the paving
Yep.
store.
They had the breaking. Now what we did issue, because they had a foundation release from the state of Indiana. So what I did is the permit was for, the entire amount with the permit, and was just at that time is for the release. Then when they get the actual design release for the rest of the building, it's modifying the permit. So they've broken ground, and so of course, they had the ground breaking. So it's moving forward. So now what I do not know is the status of anything between that, whether or not NDOT is going to require anything.
Okay.
So I have no idea about that. But obviously they have the full intention to go ahead and build the project regardless of whatever NDOT may require.
What about the entrance? Did they come to you You approve it.
Yeah. And then the other one then making use of the coming in off that, off of Veterans, and then the actual drive that's in the subdivision, Riverbend subdivision, is, that's all according to, then, I don't, yeah, they probably have agreements with Mr. Tarvin, but, may provide the opportunity then to, because before they have people coming in, especially, large vehicles, because it has not received the final coat on the streets out there, because they're gonna wait for after the development, because they don't wanna tear up the streets with the construction equipment. So it could be an opportunity right there, so whatever is working out between Mr. Tarvin and then also Mr. Pavey, as far as the approvals for using the street, and who's responsible for what, the final improvements.
All right, I just was
No,
curious if-
well, no, it's a good
Progress.
question, no, seriously.
Because some people come before the BZA and then nothing ever happens, materializes. And
Yeah.
that's why I wondered if they were progressing or not.
Yeah.
With that, Brian, I'd make a motion to approve the annual report.
Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned.